What is frequency? Frequency is a type of sound vibration. Light frequency is also a type of frequency. However, frequency is not only that. There is a video circulating on the internet like this. When the frequency of sound matches water, it also undergoes transformation. Everyone, look at this. Does it resemble the DNA pattern? Keep watching, the water even flows backward. How could this be? Can sound frequency actually reverse time? We will reveal the answer at the end of the video. Not only does it cause water to change when the frequency is correct, it even makes objects perform gravity. Some have even discovered that frequency can extinguish fire. It can even influence the human psyche. Now brace yourselves, we are about to hear the scariest sound in the world. Many people might think this is the sound of a person screaming, right? But actually, this is the sound of the call of death. In 1999, people discovered it on a human skeleton in an Aztec temple. At first, people thought it was just a decorative object until many years later, a researcher discovered it. Blowing air into it, it was discovered that it was actually a whistle. Until now, the researchers still cannot determine its actual purpose, but one thing is certain. Anyone who hears the sound of the whistle will feel an inexplicable fear, and the frequency that causes this fear is 1,000 hertz. But the question is, why does a 1,000 hertz frequency make people feel afraid? Why can sound extinguish fire? Why can frequency perform anti-gravity? How were the gigantic stones of the Egyptian pyramids built like this? The most important thing is that all of the above is not even the most miraculous aspect of frequency. Nikola Tesla once said that if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, you must think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And when someone follows the path left by Nikola Tesla, they have faced obstacles. So, what are all these things really about? Today, let's talk about frequency. Hello, everyone. Until now, we have always thought that sound is invisible, much like the wind, audible but unseen. But is it really true that sound cannot be seen? In the 18th century, a German physicist discovered that when he sprinkled sand on a metal plate and then rubbed a violin string against the edge of the plate, the sand particles, which were initially scattered, suddenly formed orderly patterns. Moreover, when the position or friction force is changed, producing different frequencies, the sand particles would also form different shapes. In 1967, the father of acoustics, Hans Jenny, further researched and discovered that when sound was at a low frequency, the patterns formed by the sand were very simple, usually basic geometric shapes. However, as the frequency increased, the patterns became more intricate and detailed. At even higher frequencies, it was possible to see mandala-like shapes. What we need to understand is that in real life, it seems impossible to see mandalas in a dynamic state. Usually, they can only be seen when in a meditative state, but now they appear in the real world, which, if high-frequency sound can generate mandala patterns, so could it be said that the frequency of those who enter a meditative state has also elevated? Could there be reasons why many people outside the spiritual realm say that raising the frequency is necessary to enter the next era? Not only did mandala patterns appear, but Hans Jenny also discovered snowflakes, honeycomb shapes, and even fish scales. Patterns also appeared in religious symbols, and what impressed Hans the most was when the frequency emitted the Om sound in Om Mani Padme Hum. A pattern resembling a cell appeared in Indian mythology. Om is considered the first sound in the universe, and it closely resembles the shape of a cell. Could this just be a coincidence? With this question in mind, the doctor continued to research further and gradually discovered that the reason sand formed specific patterns was due to the phenomenon of standing waves. When sound waves reach the medium of vibration, which is the metal plate, standing waves are formed on the plate. At this point, some parts of the plate have a larger amplitude of oscillation is called a node or wave node, which causes the sand particles to concentrate in areas with smaller amplitude, that is, at the wave nodes, thus forming patterns. Dr. Hans called this phenomenon stick. However, the strange thing is that through intentional stick experiments, people began to see things that only occur in nature, such as snowflakes, honeycombs, turtle shells, water bugs, and even singers drawing a tree. However, this still isn't the most miraculous aspect of frequency. In 1997, John Stuart Ridd, a British physicist, took machinery to the Pyramid of Khufu in Egypt and sprinkled sand on an empty stone sarcophagus. When the machine emitted frequency, the sand particles formed a special pattern that couldn't be replicated in the lab with the same frequency. What amazed people the most was that afterward, Hans vaguely saw a pattern resembling the sun god Ra in the sarcophagus. Hans believed that the reason the image was blurred was because the sarcophagus had been damaged, but a large circle and a small dot could still be seen. The ancient Egyptians believed that the sun god Ra had risen. Creating the world of coincidence is when the Om frequency is emitted. A similar pattern also appears, and in the two great ancient civilizations, these two patterns represent creativity. Could this just be a coincidence? Not only did Hans see the sun god Ra, but he also saw the Eye of Horus and the Egyptian hieroglyphs representing protection. A significant point is that in the 3rd century BC, the ancient Greek philosopher Demetrios of Phum mentioned that in ancient Egypt, when priests sang hymns to the gods, they sang 7 vowels in order. The sound of these vowels was so melodious that it made the listeners stop paying attention to the accompanying musical instruments. In another ancient manuscript, an Egyptian priest said that for them, what they used was not ordinary language, but sounds filled with power. If what is stated in this manuscript is true, can we hypothesize that the Egyptians had harnessed the power of sound and, through this source of power, made the phonetic symbols in the sarcophagus capable of rebirth? They had seen this pattern, and perhaps some will say it's nonsense, but there is indeed pseudoscience where frequencies have been used to perform anti-gravity, making stones float. So the mystery of how the pyramids were built, which remains unsolved to this day, could it also involve using the power of frequency in construction? In the book Gravitational Force and the Cosmic Grid, it is mentioned that in 1939, a Swedish doctor named Gell, a graduate of Office University, was commissioned by a friend to go to Tibet to treat a lama. During this time, he witnessed the lamas using sound to make a huge stone levitate. Dr. Gell said it was an action that took place on a cliff 250 meters above the ground. In front of the action was a platform, and the lama used ropes to climb up to it. Below the action, at a distance of 250 meters, there was a large stone trough. The distance between the trough and the cliff was also 250 meters. A yoke animal pulled a stone, 1 meter long and 1.5 meters wide, up the giant trough. Behind the giant trough was a music platform. They arranged it in the shape of a fan with 13. The drum and 6 trumpets behind the orchestra had 200 lamas standing there. The secrecy and silence surrounding the event led to questions about its authenticity. However, Dr. Gell was not the only one to document this event. In the 10th century, the Arab scholar Abun Hussan Ali Mahdi wrote in his book that when the Egyptians moved large stones, they would place a papyrus scroll with magical inscriptions beneath the stone. They would then use a metal rod to strike the stone. Could this be the sound power that was mentioned earlier? And if sound indeed has power, how great is this source of power? This is Oto Masaru, the chairman of a Japanese company. In 2004, he published a book titled The Water Knows the Answer, or The Message of Water. In this book, Dr. Emoto Masaru boldly speculated that water has some level of consciousness. If you say thank you to water, it will be happy. And if you call it stupid, it will be sad. And all of this began in 1986, when Dr. Emoto visited the United States. While playing golf with a friend, he suddenly experienced severe pain in his ankle. At that moment, his friend sprayed a special treated resonant water on him. Then the pain faded away, and later, Otto read in a book that mentioned there are no two identical snowflakes in the world. These two things made him very curious about water, and so he began trying to freeze distilled water and then observe the water crystals under a microscope. He then discovered that water in different environments forms crystals with different shapes. For example, the crystallized tap water in Tokyo has a different shape from the crystallized spring water from the Alps in Japan. At that point, he thought the reason the crystals were different was because of the source of the water, one being urban tap water and the other natural spring water. To verify his hypothesis, he took water from the same source and placed it in two different locations. After some time, he brought both bottles back to the lab for observation. What surprised him was that the crystal formations from the two bottles were different. Could it be that water can record information from the environment it's in? If that's the case, what would happen if he showed it a word? So Otto poured water from the same source. In two containers A and B, he wrote love and thank you on the label of container A, while B had very disgusting person, we will kill the person, and the water crystallized in a chaotic way, carrying curiosity. Emoto continued with his experiment. This photo was for the water to see the word peace, and this was for the water to see war. Emoto once doubted, could it be that water doesn't actually read words? Maybe I've been overthinking. However, he later discovered that when water was exposed to the written words from different countries, but carrying the same meaning, like universe, the crystallization patterns in Japanese, English, and German were quite similar. Love, in Japanese, English, and Greek also showed similarities. The most remarkable part was after the great earthquake in Japan, Emoto took this photo. He believed that water had been tainted with the fear of humans, and 3 months after the disaster, after receiving help from around the world, it was clear that the water's crystallization patterns began to show improvement. The world of the victims gradually recovered, and the water crystals began to show changes. Could it be that water, besides being in its environment, can also feel human emotions? Not only that, but Emoto also discovered that water could even listen to music. This photo shows the water crystallization after listening to Brahms' Rue, which was completely different from when it listened to Sand's Farewell. Moreover, when the water heard Farewell, the crystallization appeared with separated shapes. At that point, Emoto still wasn't fully convinced, so he immediately made the water listen to Heartbreak Hotel by Enid Bradel, and the water became shattered and broken. But when he played Beethoven's Country Symphony, the crystallization of the water returned to a beautiful form. Not only did he make the water listen to music, but later on, Emoto also began to talk to the water. This image is of the water before hearing a prayer, and this one is after hearing a prayer. And here is the crystallization of the water after hearing the chant Namo Amitabha Buddha. As the experiment progressed, Emoto came up with a bold hypothesis. He suggested that water has the ability to memorize and store information and can change when the environment changes. Emoto also discovered that the frequency of sound can influence the structure of water. Therefore, when music is played, the crystallization form of the water changes accordingly. Since 70% of the human body is made up of water, could it be possible to enhance human health by changing the state of water? Emoto even proposed the concept of disease arising from qi. This coincides with the saying, "All diseases arise from qi" in the ancient medical text, the Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon, Huangdi Neijing. In traditional Chinese medicine, qi is the fundamental energy of life, flowing through the body and influencing the state of health. When the flow of qi is blocked, diseases follow. Emoto hypothesized that if we pray for water before drinking it, or find ways to raise the frequency of water, we may have the opportunity to regulate the flow of qi. When qi flows smoothly, the body will be healthy. To further support his viewpoint, Emoto also mentioned a famous longevity village in China, Bamagan Village. According to a 1990 survey, in Bama Village, for every 100,000 people, 30 lived past 100 years old. There is a river there called the Banyang River, and the locals drink water from this river. Emoto even specifically collected water samples from here and got this photo. Therefore, he believed that the long lifespan of people in this village is strongly related to this river. However, not everyone can drink the water from the Banyang River, so Emoto used special technology to research and develop a special kind of water. According to Emoto, drinking this water regularly not only makes people healthier, but can also cure diseases. He even presented several specific cases, claiming that many people who use this special water became healthier. This marked a turning point in the situation. Many people, especially doctors and scientists, believed that Emoto was promoting these ideas simply to sell his own water. Those who felt healthier after drinking the water were likely just experiencing the placebo effect. The placebo effect occurs when people believe in something, even if it doesn't have any actual effect. Even if these things don't have any practical effect, people may still feel better. However, personally, I believe that Emoto didn't think this way, because in his book, he mentions that from the time we are embryos, our bodies are about 99% water. After birth, our bodies are about 90% water. And when we reach adulthood, the water content decreases to about 70%. When we die from old age, the water content in our bodies is only about 50%. This means that the water content in our bodies decreases gradually over the years. In other words, most of the time in our lives we exist in the form of water, and this water comes from the universe, circulating and flowing throughout the world. When water from the outside world enters our bodies, it brings with it the subtle energy of the world, even the energy of the universe. Therefore, when we drink water, our bodies not only absorb the energy of the water, but we may also absorb the message of the water. When the water comes from a beautiful place, its water crystals will be beautiful because it carries energy. The point Emoto is making here is not just about whether the water is polluted or not, but more importantly, it is due to the environment around us, which causes the water to generate some kind of energy that science cannot verify or confirm. It is this energy that makes the water crystals beautiful, and it is this same energy that makes humans, with about 70% of water in their bodies, healthier. So, Could this energy be the frequency? Royal Raymond Rife was an American inventor who developed the universal microscope in the 1930s. It is said that this microscope could achieve a magnification of 60,000 times and could observe living microorganisms and viruses. This was considered cutting-edge technology at the time. However, his most famous invention was not the microscope, but a machine that could kill cancer cells. It turned out that with the help of the universal microscope, he discovered the BX virus. He believed that cancer was not caused by the mutation. If you find this video inspiring and meaningful, don't forget to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and spread it to others. Genetic mutations in cells are caused by the BX virus. After discovering this virus, he realized that to effectively combat this virus, it was necessary to find a method to attack it precisely. He then discovered that every microorganism, including bacteria and viruses, has a specific frequency. When the machine emits a similar frequency, it causes the structure of the microorganism's cells to resonate intensely, ultimately causing it to break apart or die. In fact, it's not just microorganisms. All objects have a resonant frequency. As long as you find it, you can make the object resonate, even potentially destroying it. The principle is similar to how someone can break a wine glass just by singing. Everyone should take a close look. Before the glass breaks, the person in the video first taps on the glass. This is to identify the resonant frequency of the glass. The key point is that after that, Mr. Rife successfully used his machine to cure cancer in mice. This event attracted the attention of the medical community. In 1934, the University of Southern California established a special medical research committee, bringing 16 terminal cancer patients from the B. Diner City Hospital to his laboratory and clinic in San Diego for treatment. After 90 days of treatment, he cured 14 patients, and the last 2 patients were also cured within 6 weeks. Realizing that the cure rate of R had reached 100%, Professor of Physiology and Clinical Medicine at the University of Southern California, Mill P. Johnson, decided to use Mr. DV's therapy to treat cancer patients in his private clinic. According to Professor Johnson, many cancer patients were indeed cured. In the 1944 annual report of the Smithsonian Board of Trustees, Mr. DV's name was even mentioned. After that, more and more reports emerged about the research achievements of DV, and many scientists and doctors agreed with the effectiveness of his therapy. Some doctors even confirmed it for him. However, after receiving public attention, opposing voices began to emerge. According to mainstream medicine, except for some viruses related to certain types of cancer, most cancers are caused by genetic mutations in cells. However, Mr. R argued that cancer was caused by the BX virus. The problem is that apart from Mr. DV's microscope, no other scientist has been able to see this BX virus. So why didn't these scientists use Mr. Bright's microscope to check if the BX virus actually exists? Later, DV's laboratory was destroyed by someone, with equipment, machinery, and important research documents all burned. Meanwhile, the scientists who had supported DV were mocked, slandered, and harassed. Therefore, Dr. Johnson, who had once used DV's method to cure cancer patients, decided to hold a press conference to clear DV's name. Unfortunately, the night before the press conference, Professor Johnson suddenly suffered a heart attack and passed away. There were rumors that later, his family found signs of poisoning in his body. However, regarding this matter, we did not find any related records, but we did find that before Johnson passed away, the laboratory of John C. Burnett, another scientist who had been involved in R's research, was also unexpectedly destroyed by fire. All research documents and equipment were burned. Meanwhile, the days of Mr. R were not easy either. Philip H., a co-founder and shareholder of the company with him, took R to court, claiming that he did not receive the appropriate management rights and treatment. Along with that, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, was conducting a strict review of R's activities. After a series of attacks, R's company was forced to declare bankruptcy. R eventually sank into alcohol and passed away on August 0, 1971. However, the concepts that Mr. Dve introduced did not vanish with him. Can you imagine a sturdy bridge being torn apart by the wind? This is not a science fiction story, but a real event that happened on the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in the U.S. on November 7, 1940. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge happened to resonate with the frequency of the strong wind, causing it to be torn apart. This led to the effect of swirling winds creating resonance, and this violent movement ultimately caused the bridge to collapse. However, this was not the end of the story. Decades after the bridge collapsed, musician Anthony Henn, by chance, witnessed the scene of the bridge's collapse. At that moment, he thought, if resonance can destroy structures made of iron and steel, could this type of energy be applied on a smaller scale? For example, in microorganisms or viruses. With this question in mind, he turned to several scientists. After months of trials and failures, he eventually discovered that relying on just a single frequency alone would not be enough to kill cancer cells. Instead, two frequencies were needed, one high frequency and one low frequency, with the high frequency needing to be 11 times greater than the low frequency. He called this phenomenon the 11th harmonic. What was crucial was that he also demonstrated the destruction of cancer cells. It is worth noting that, to this day, Anthony's research has not yet entered clinical application. He has not successfully cured any cancer patients. However, he mentioned that his experiments successfully destroyed 25 to 42% of leukemia cancer cells, and at the highest point, could kill up to 60% of leukemia cells. He observed that the growth rate of leukemia cancer cells was slowed by 65%. Not only leukemia, but he also conducted experiments on ovarian cancer cells. It can be seen that under the resonance created by a specific frequency, the structure of the cancer cells is damaged and eventually disintegrates. Additionally, there were experiments on pancreatic cancer. From Anthony's experimental images, it can be seen that indeed some cells were destroyed, but he also emphasized that his experiments are still in the laboratory stage and have not yet been tested on humans. However, it cannot be denied that this discovery has brought hope to cancer patients. According to a 2022 survey by the World Health Organization, 10 million people have died from cancer. Leading scientists worldwide. They are all trying to find a treatment method for the challenges and various possibilities, including the direction of science and the reason why, as of 2024, cancer has not been cured. We have previously discussed this in detail in the video, Humans Have Taken a 5,000-Year Detour. Anyone interested can explore more. As for Mr. Anthony, the reason he wanted to study the relationship between frequency and cancer was because he had a desire to return to the initial question. Why can frequencies cause water to undergo changes? The principle is similar to the experiment on sand, which is caused by standing waves. If sound causes a water pipe to vibrate at a specific frequency, standing waves are created, and these standing waves will cause the water in the air to form segments, creating gaps that look like water standing still at different positions. So, what about reverse flow? The current explanation is this. In reality, water does not flow backward. The rotational speed of the camera and the speed at which the water forms standing waves reach a form of synchronization. At a certain point, the images captured by the camera will create an illusion of water flowing backward or standing still. This is similar to the visual phenomenon that occurs when the propeller of an airplane is spinning. When the speed of the propeller does not match the camera's shutter speed, an illusion of the propeller spinning slowly or in reverse is created. Therefore, we can see this, but in the end, the water still flows down to the ground. As for the experiment Emoto conducted with water crystals, there was indeed a change. But mainstream scientists argue that the change in the crystallization of water has nothing to do with whether it was praised or not. It is caused by temperature and humidity. Some even suspect that the photos published by Emoto Masaru were carefully selected. Out of many photos, he intentionally chose the most beautiful ones and the worst ones to confirm his point of view. However, the truth is that the majority of people believe that Emoto's experiment truly proved that water has consciousness, can communicate and store information. This may align with the ancient saying, "All things have a spirit." The floating rocks in Tibet do not have verified evidence because the images were taken by the British government. Additionally, it was discovered that Gel was not the real name of the doctor. Yes, to avoid affecting his professional image, he chose to remain anonymous when publishing what he saw, which turned the situation into a big question mark in the eyes of the public. However, upon closer reflection, it cannot be relied upon that the failure to disclose the real name is a reason to decide whether to believe or not, because there are people who, even if they reveal their identity, can still lie. Moreover, if someone doesn't believe, they will still not believe, regardless of whether their real name is disclosed. This makes me think of the astronomer Copernicus in 1543, when he said that the Earth revolves around the sun. At that time, no one believed him. Yet today, doesn't the whole world believe this? Regarding whether the frequency of sound can cure cancer or not, I reserve my opinion, but based on the experimental data from Mr. Dve and the images he published about frequency resonance being able to kill microorganisms are possible. But whether it can kill cancer cells or not, we will have to wait and see when science speaks out. And if someone on the internet claims they can replicate Mr. Dve's experiment and cure you, inviting you to buy products, don't buy it because it is likely to be a scam. In reality, Mr. Dve's machine and the theories he proposed have always been suppressed, and the old records are no longer preserved in their entirety. Some say humans are really interesting. Sometimes we keep searching for lofty things outside, but often, just changing the way we think, our mindset, or our research and development direction, a little can make everything seem much clearer. I wonder what you think. Do you believe frequencies can do the things we discussed today, or even more? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below the video. And that's all for today's sharing. If you find this video or the content on our Miss Ruby channel truly helpful, please share it with a friend to explore more together. Thank you all very much. Goodbye and see you again.